What's up? It is Melissa T, the procrastination bully, with an offer for you. I am announcing a winter sale for the Getting the Win gear store. If you're someone, you've seen our shirts, you like the gear, you like what we're saying, hashtag get on that, hashtag luxury item, all the good things. If you're familiar with these catchphrases and you love them, they resonate with you, go to gettingthewingear.com. I've got a new winter collection that has launched. And I've got some new items there as well. Not just the winter collection, but a few other new items as well. So if you're someone who's navigated the trauma of transition, or if you're just somebody that's looking to beat procrastination in your own life, and you want the clothing with the message to remind you that you are a winner and a go-getter, head over to gettingthewingear.com for all your swag. Use the code WINTER for 20% off your order. That's the code WINTER at checkout.
It's hard. It takes intention to be vulnerable. It takes intention to be genuine, and it's very easy to fall behind that mantle of leader. And when that happens, and you talked about this, not only does your growth end with that understanding, so does your team's.
Good evening. Happy Wednesday, my winners and goal-getters. Welcome to another edition of the Getting the Win Show. I am your host, Melissa T, the procrastination bully. And in this week's episode, I am interviewing the one and only Yogi Mueller, who is a mentor and a leader. And he has chosen to take up that mantle as his message, as his purpose in the marketplace. He focuses on the power of mentorship and leadership. His most recent book, his very first book, is called The Great Slapping. And that book focuses primarily on the power of mentorship. So that's what we're going to be talking about in this episode of the show. We're diving deep into mentorship, how it has impacted Yogi himself, the way he has mentored his mentees, and the leadership experience that he has had personally. And we do get into a little bit of brass tacks in terms of book creation. Like, I wanted to get his take on how he was able to write his book and what his process was. So we get to enjoy all of that. This one is roughly an hour long. So come ready to take notes and enjoy the interview. As promised, I have the one and only Yogi Mueller, author of The Great Slapping. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being on. I appreciate you.
Oh, Melissa, it is an absolute pleasure. I've been a fan of yours for a long time. So it's my absolute honor.
Thank you. And full disclaimer for you who are watching, like, Yogi and I go way back. This gentleman was my professor in college. And I'll be honest with you, Yogi, like, you're the only person I could think of that would make project management worth coming to class for.
Wow.
Like, you actually made the class interesting, which
that's a huge testament, right?
Sexy. Was that?
That's a huge testament. You often do not hear the words project management and enjoyable in the same sentence. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But I've been following your journey very closely as well. And I so appreciate that you chose to take the mantle of leadership and mentorship, because that's a topic that will never die. Like, that is something that will always be necessary. So I would love to start our conversation with your personal journey with leadership, like how you first kind of developed the sort of unction to want to get into it. Like, were you mentored? Did somebody notice leadership in you and kind of develop that, and you took it from there? Kind of talk about that.
So I never as a child wanted to be a talent development person or specifically a leader. It was, I think, just something I kind of fell into. I was never really, I wasn't the quarterback of the football team, or I was never first chair of trumpet. I was always third or second, right? So I never really had a mantle of leader. I didn't even make it to patrol leader in Boy Scouts. I think I got to assistant patrol leader. And I think what attracted me to leadership was this underpinning of helping people unlock their potential. I know that sounds cliche now that I have a book on mentorship, but that I think is the nucleus of where that came from. where it wasn't about the power, the strappings of leadership or the keys to the executive washroom. You were able to impact people in positive ways and help unlock those. Now, as a snot nosed, 22-year-old kid that was a key holder at a retail location, it didn't hit me at that moment. But I think, you and I talked about, where the amalgamation of our experience, that awareness finally came. I think when I got to Disney and really understood, because they started to put context around leadership and context around talent development and learning and improvement and mentorship. And one of my first formal mentorship experiences was at Disney, and where I had to find a mentor and work with that mentor for a leadership program. And I think that opened my eyes because it provided a definition for something that I had already kind of knew existed, but not in that context before. So I think that's where the specific journey and destination started for me.
Awesome. I would love for you to like dig into that a little bit more. Like what were some of those aha moments that you had like with that going through that mentorship program? Like, oh, this makes sense now. You know what I mean? Like it was no longer an abstraction for you. Like what like name a moment where like it became
Wow.
real for you.
Well, I will have to say that throughout that time I was also a professional comedian, especially in my early 20s and in mid 20s. And when I got into actually facilitating classes, part of mine was like, oh my God, I've got a captive audience for the next hour and a half. So that also instilled my love of teaching too, as a matter of fact. But a specific moment, I the cosmos works in funny ways. And when you are in need of reinforcement of the value you provide to humanity, it comes from the cosmos. It comes from that higher power where you get this reinforcement when you need it the most. And I think it could, Melissa, I think this came from some feedback I got where it's like, I really appreciate you working with me on this. I never knew I could do this. And
Mm,
because of the interaction, because of the questions, because of the pressure that you put on me to help me realize my value, I did that. And I had great leaders at Disney, and not so great leaders at Disney, but I had great leaders at Disney that helped me open my eyes to my value. So while I was helping others find theirs, I was also in a journey to find my value and where I plant my temple. And it wasn't until I I started writing this book that I understood that this was my temple. I think I think I've made a mark as a mentor
mhm.
even before I identified myself as a mentor. But as I look back on it, Melissa, I think, and you're probably going to ask this question, so I'm going to probably steal your thunder a little bit. But I wrote it because I wanted to have an homage to my mentors to that helped me get me here. My homage to my mentees because I learned from them as well, and also because I fear for the future of mentorship. I fear for
Mm,
where we're going as a community, for various reasons, and we can dive into that for a later question. But um, it it was again, it wasn't a lightning bolt. It wasn't Don King being told in a dream the night before he needs to grow his hair this way, right? It was a slow burn realization that this is my why.
got you. Yeah, that's actually the perfect segue there because I did see a clip on LinkedIn where you were on another podcast and you mentioned that your why is like planting that seed for the tree whose shade you will never enjoy. I love that you shared that. I had heard it phrased a different way by Jay Shetty. He was on a podcast called Impact Theory and he said it a little bit differently, but I recognized it immediately and I was like, that's me too. Like what's interesting, Yogi, is I usually see myself as the person that helps the leader. Like I was put on this earth to be the best number two ever. And like I fully embrace it. You know what I mean? Like I'm that person that makes sure the leader is on top of everything. Make sure I mentioned this in my last podcast episode where I said we dot the I's, cross the T's, and curl all the G's and J's. Like that's
That's
that's the
thorough.
job of the yeah. You know what I mean? So I love that you shared that as your why. But I do want to get into that concern for the future that you have. Like what is that? What are you seeing that is causing that concern for you?
There's a couple of things. One, I'm gonna communication and technology.
Mhm.
I write about this in the book that, in fact, I don't know if she was in your class, but one of your fellow wholesalers, brilliant, creative, dynamic, and we would have the deepest conversations on texts. But if she was sitting next to me, she wouldn't even make eye contact with me. So,
Mm,
and I'm going to speak in generalities, right? So we've
yes.
got this divide of technology and styles. You've got the experienced generation that just pick up the damn phone, and you've got other ones, they go, phone? Well, that's not even a thing anymore. And so because of that, there's a lack of patience and desire for understanding and to find that common ground. Well, if they don't want to have a conversation with me, blah blah blah, or well, I don't want to, such a boomer, blah blah blah, right? And and that's bad in itself. But I think what also we have here is the reason I call the book The Great Slapping is because true mentorship and positive mentorship can get rough, meaning
Mm,
that you know uh, you're going to get roughed up from somebody that cares about you because they I like the phrase, they're not settling for the version you are today because they can see the version you could be tomorrow. And
right.
sometimes that takes roughing you up a little bit with your rough edges. Well, if you have, and again, in generalities, younger generations that often see critical and constructive feedback as an attack and not as an investment, I mean, that literally eats at the root of what true mentorship is about, right? And
Mm,
so we've got a lot of these hills that may seem insurmountable, but if we don't do that, I think we run the risk of unrealized potential. I was having an AI conversation with somebody, and I said, they said, well, mentors give you all the information, and all you have to do is type that into a chat GPT, and they can walk you through any situation. They're programmed that way. And I said, yes. And I said two things. One, have you ever noticed that ChatGPT thinks you're the most brilliant person to ever walk the face of the earth? You have never typed in anything more creative. You're absolutely just freaking brilliant. And I'm surprised you're not king of the world because you're that smart. Well, a good mentor is not going to tell you that. In fact, a good mentor is going to tell you when you're acting like a dumbass and you're doing stupid things, right? But on the other side, if you type a question into ChatGPT, it's going to give you an answer because it's programmed that way. It's an algorithm. A mentor is going to work with you because they believe in your potential. They believe in what you're capable of being, and they see it, and they want you to see it too, not some rote program.
mhm.
So that is the piece I think that we're missing. And honestly, a larger conversation is we're missing that connectivity anyway as a people, and it's going to get worse. But mentorship is that passing of the torch. It's that passing of the knowledge and experience and the slings and the arrows that people my age have taken and are willing to say, hey, you might be able to avoid that sling or that arrow, but we got to come to that understanding. So that's kind of why I wrote the book, Melissa, is a call to action, not just for you to be a mentor and to give back, but to be a mentee and be brave enough to do both.
Very important point. Like I'm really glad you brought that up because there are some who will attack leadership in that sort of super dominant way, like my way is the right way or like my way is the only way. And the danger in that is that if you're not learning while doing or learning while dominating, you end up self-destructing in a way. Like either you end up taking the shots directly or you end up causing major fallout for your team behind you and not realize it in some cases. So I'm so glad you brought that up. Like, have you ever experienced something like that in your timeline where you had a leadership role and maybe misjudged something or like missed a detail and it kind of the
Oh,
end result was like, oh wait, I missed something. Like, did you ever
all the
experience something like
time.
that?
All the time. But that is that awareness is a skill. That's that awareness of your fallibility, and the fact that you don't know everything.
Mm,
Sometimes people never cross that bridge, and because it's a tough bridge to cross. That you're not the smartest person in the room. And I laugh that even Socrates, way back in ancient Greece, says the wise man is the one who knows nothing, that knows he knows nothing, right?
mm,
And that awareness of your continued opportunities for growth and knowledge, I think, is essential for great leaders. If you're in a particular position and you feel you have nothing left to learn, I'm sad for you. I'm sad for your unrealized potential. But that also creates, I think you were hitting at that positional authority. Well, just because I have this title and I got this title, I am the definitive answer and oracle on everything. That's not
mm,
the case, right? And I think that comes with vulnerability, that comes with humility. If you're a Brene Brown fan or anybody along those lines, it's it
love
it
her.
it's hard. It takes intention to be vulnerable. It takes intention to be genuine, and it's very easy to fall behind that mantle of leader.
Mm,
And when that happens, and you talked about this, not only does your growth end with that understanding, so does your team's.
yeah, yeah. Talk about that, the importance of having those conversations, to your point about Brene Brown, because one thing she's like, her mantle that she's carrying is the importance of having vulnerable conversations, or as I've dubbed them, clarifying conversations. Like, most people call them difficult conversations because they're uncomfortable, but yeah, I call them clarifying conversations. But like, what have you learned in your experience about how to have them, like how to broach them, especially given what you shared with the sort of divide that we're experiencing with technology and some people's unwillingness to talk in person anymore due to either fear of rejection or they're just unwilling to hear an opposing viewpoint. Kind of talk about that.
Fear is at the base of all of that. Uh, the fear of the fear of rejection if you're vulnerable or that you have a weakness. Fear that you're going to be seen as something less than you want to be seen.
Mm,
Fear of just opening yourself up and having that moment of vulnerability, for lack of a better term. And relationship is at the core, and trust I talk as being foundational in a mentoring relationship, because you need to be authentic. You need to be able to have a no judgment zone when you're talking with mentors, and you need to understand the intention of the feedback. Good
mm,
feedback is to build people up, not to tear people down. And if you second guess the feedback from a mentor or a leader, that at the base level is you don't trust that person.
yeah.
And again, you might see it as an attack. You see ulterior motives for that versus what it truly is. And I think when it comes to feedback, if you're going to deliver feedback appropriately, you need to be able to receive it appropriately. And one of the things that I created is the grit mindset, and it has to do with feedback, and it stands for getting over yourself and reassessing feedback with honesty, getting your ego and your honest look at yourself out of the way. And then the other two is investing in improvement and treasuring the lessons and growth, which is okay. Once you listen to the feedback, what are you going to do with it? Because I,
Mm,
I think that's foundational. You have to, it all starts with you. And if you're open and if you're honest with your opportunities and you share those, people fear the mantle or the title of mentor because, they're not perfect. They don't want to be seen as not knowing or having all the answers. Well, that's not the purpose of mentorship. You're not supposed to have all the answers. And a great mentor will put the dirty, nasty stuff on the table too, plus all the polished stuff.
mhm.
Because I think that's where that true learning is going to exist for that mentee. So, um, again, bottom line is we need to make sure that we're creating good relationships, solid relationships built on trust and investment. But that has to start with you. You can't rely on the other person to make all those changes. And if you're not open, then you're not going to be giving feedback that's effective.
Very true. That's a great transition into the importance of self-awareness. You touched on it earlier a little bit, but I would love to hear how you were able to like come across that or ascertain it, if you will, like over your years of leadership and mentorship. I'll be honest with you, I encountered my self-awareness through a tool. Like I took the extreme execution flight assessment, which is basically it's a remix to the disc assessment, like
Yeah.
a much more user friendly version of it. But it was through that I understood, I had a better picture of what my behavior style is, and came to understand like, oh, I react this way and this way because of this thing. Like, you know what I mean? Like it was a great jumping off point for me to have a better understanding of who I was. So I'd love to hear like how you organically, gained your sense of self-awareness.
So I think um, one of the, and you're going to laugh, one of the influences of my life is Dale Carnegie and How to Win Friends and Influence People. And if you remember my class, that was required reading in my class. Oh, I
That
see it
book
right
is still
behind you.
back
There it
there.
is.
It's still there.
I love it. I absolutely love that. And he in his tenets, it's about being genuine. It's not about being the most important person in the room and making other people and highlighting other people's importance. And through that, you increase your ability to develop relationships by bowing to the not the other smarter people in the room. Um, what is it? Ralph Waldo Emerson says, "I learn something from everybody I meet, therefore they are my superior."
Mm,
And it was a journey for me going through that, and it started with Dale Carnegie and emphasizing the importance, emphasizing the expertise of people around me over myself. So that began a journey of humility. And let me tell you, being an ex comedian, 6'6", 300 pounds, you're the center of attention in the room, even though you don't want to be. So it was an intentional journey
mhm,
to get there. And when going through that, I really became intentional with my concept of gratitude
mm,
because I understand and I was able to process and really treasure what people have done for me. And the not just the knowledge, but the experience and the slappings and the investment. And so you bring in this journey of humility and then this journey of gratitude. You realize that not only are you not an island, that you are here because of that investment of other people, it
mhm.
increases this desire to give back
Yeah.
and to help unlock that potential of others. So I think those are the things that kind of helped me get to this spot that I am today.
Got you. And I appreciate you sharing that. I want to jump back to the AI conversation really quickly because I would love to hear your take on it. To what we were discussing about that sort of separation with the fact that the AI is programmed to make you feel like you're the best thing since sliced bread. I would love to hear your take on those outlier cases that we started hearing. Like, you know, I don't know if you'd seen it, but there was a situation with a young man who had a real life partner, okay? Like present tense, in person, real life girlfriend, and fell in love with his chat GPT and proposed to his chat GPT. Like, what are your thoughts on cases like that where the line gets so blurred that the user then starts to confuse the AI for a person?
Great question. And you know what? I think it's not just AI. I think it's social media just in general because AI is at the root of that. AI has created these echo chambers. It has created environments where people seek out, whether it's online or in the groups in those quote unquote communities online, that isolate you from conflict. It surrounds you with like thinking. It insulates you. It bubble wraps you. And anything outside of that is abhorrent. It is evil, and it must be destroyed and taken down. And that's not a good thing, right? And so when you have an AI, and let me tell you, she's got a great accent too. If you're into accents, you could really. I was watching a video where the guy was having a fake conversation with his AI, and his girlfriend's like, "You're going to take that female voice off. You're going to put a male voice. I don't ever want to hear her voice again." It's uncannily real having a conversation with with ChatGPT, and if you allow yourself to get sucked down into that rabbit hole, yeah, I mean it's literally like a fever dream. It's like a peyote experience where you are in this fantasy world where you are the best thing since sliced bread. I've been married for over 30 years, together with my wife 36. I am not always the best thing since sliced bread, right? And she will let me know that, and I appreciate that. Maybe not in the moment, but ultimately I appreciate that. And that's the stuff that keeps us grounded. That's the stuff that keeps us real. Relationships aren't 100% all the time, 24/7, blowing smoke up your rear end. And that's what social media, that's what AI does. And it makes us weak. It makes us intolerant. It makes us have a self-image that it's all about polish. It's a fresh coat of paint, and there's no substance behind it. And that's scary because people don't get past that shine. And that's another reason why mentorship is ripping at the seams, is because mentorship requires real talk, and we spend so much energy polishing our image with photos and postings and likes and things like that we miss out what's being real.
That's very well said, and I'm glad you said the quiet part out loud. Like the echo chamber thing does indeed create a weakness, like within us, like in terms of our inability to process opposing viewpoints. Because I'll be honest with you, I'm affected. I can't even lie about that. I've been affected by that. You know what I mean? As someone who is, I'll call myself like early millennial, because I'm early 80s. So we've been through the whole transition with all the technology, right? But yeah, I have seen and experienced for myself what that feels like to bump up against somebody that I don't agree with and not necessarily wanting to hear the viewpoint. So I get it. You know what I mean? I appreciate that. You said it exactly the way it needed to be said. I'm going to go into briefly, my experience. My viewers have heard me talk about this, but my 9 years in the news media, one of the topics that nobody else wanted to touch was politics. So I got this like head on, where, obviously for the most part, Florida has been a red state, but have Mike will travel. You know what I mean? Like if there's an elected official that is doing a press conference, I'm not going to not do it simply because I don't align with their ideology. Like a job is a job. Like a job for a news media outlet is to get the news out.
Right.
And with our outlet, we valued the truth of what was being said. Like we didn't spin anything. For one, the spin would take too much work. Can we be honest about that?
It's a lot of energy right?
Exactly. We allowed the audience to think for themselves. Like this, what the person said, you get to decide how you feel about it. You know what I mean? But I mentioned the news media job because I did have to bump up against opinions that I disagreed with, especially in the beginning. So the CEO, he saw something in me that I didn't see. Like I saw myself as a writer because that's my gift and my skill set, both. But he saw my then makeup free face and somehow saw me as like a great on camera person. And he challenged me, Yogi, to start wearing makeup, which I pushed back vehemently against. I
Yeah,
didn't want to
that's
do
like
it.
in every harassment video. Oh, I think you should put more lipstick on and smile more, right? You're
You know what I mean? But his point, like, to be fair to him, he was explaining, since we were transitioning to on camera, previously we were strictly written content, we were transitioning now into video content. So he was saying, just in terms of the industry, in order to be taken seriously, in order to be competitive, I understand how you feel about not wanting to wear it, but in order to be competitive, this is a step that you'll want to consider.
Was it a
So,
slapping? Did you get a great slapping with that? And you look fantastic, by the way. But
thank you.
do you consider that a slapping? Something that shook you awake
Yeah,
to the realities there.
yeah, it did. Especially like once I did get into the on camera side and seeing how our fellow local media folks operate, like being in the field and seeing how they move and everything. And I was like, okay, I'm shoulder to shoulder with these people. Like, I get it, you know? So, yeah,
Yeah, because you had to undo a lot of precognition there, right? You had to and your pre feelings and again, you were able to reassess with honesty, right? Your ego first shot back and go, well, I'm not going to be one of those people. I'm going to be true to who I am, and your ego was all cutting in the way. But then when you finally let it kind of seep through the amygdala and get to the prefrontal cortex, you found the truth. You found that kernel of important feedback in there, and it had nothing to do with your appearance as an individual or the beauty that you were possessing. It was like, look, if you want to be successful, you kind of need to get on board on this, so the world can appreciate the value that you bring to the table. And I was thinking of something when you were talking earlier. And I want to tie this concept of the echo chamber back to leaders and why we have leaders out there that are not vulnerable. If you think about it, like C-suites, they're in their own echo chamber. They have yes people around them. They will have people around them. Yes, JB, that's the most intelligent thing I've ever heard. That is a tremendous idea. And so when you are in those positions of authority or power in an organization, you have to fight really hard to identify where those echo chambers are and to make sure that you are not falling into that rabbit hole of your own brilliance because of people's fear of retribution not telling you that you're brilliant. So that why that intentionality is so important as a leader to come across as authentic and vulnerable.
that part.
Look at you inspiring me. That's awesome.
Hey, I love it. I love it. Yeah, and one of the other, to that point, there, like, I did witness that sort of, not the echo chamber thing, but to the point that I was making earlier about when you think your way is the best way or like the only way, and then you kind of harm
Blinders. Yep.
yourself. Exactly, like
Yep.
put the blinders on and you're just going. I did kind of witness that with, like, in the media job, because there were certain very common grievances that would come up with our team, and like the CEO and I are talking back and forth about it because I was essentially his right hand, but there were certain things he wouldn't budge on, and they ended up it ended up being deleterious to him in the long run. At this point, he has a slightly different team now, and I'm no longer with them. But there were certain concessions he had to make in order to move forward. Like, oh, okay, they were right about this. Like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I'm gonna have to, you know what I mean? So, kind of talk about, because I'm guessing that you've had the privilege of perhaps consulting with certain leaders, certain C-suite leaders, or mentoring people that are in those leadership roles. Like, what are you telling them when you encounter stuff like that, where they're very dead set in their perspective and you're like, wait, like, it's important for you to, like, open your ears to your people. Kind of talk about that.
I start at that foundational level. If somebody says, "Hey, can you coach this person?" Let's say, my first question is always, talk to me about their level of self-awareness. And that is always where I start. That's pretty, that's the germination of the grit mindset too, is because that's where you need to start. And I would explore why, and get down, do some critical theory and some critical analysis, and get down the 5 whys or whatever, to why does this person hold on to their ideas, or why does this person not vulnerable, or why does this person not appreciate authenticity. And if you can get there, then you can make the appropriate connections onto why these other things are important. But if you have, if how can I put this in an analogy? If you don't know what's causing the fire, you can throw water on it all day and the flame will pop back up. Right. And so you really need to understand what is the source of that fire that's causing this issue, and then attack it that way. And one key does not unlock every door, Melissa. So every approach is going to be different for those people. But if you're a coach and you're going in and you're hired, paid X amount of dollars an hour to go and coach this executive, but you don't understand their level of authenticity and awareness, you're throwing a dart at a board that doesn't even exist on the wall. And your job is to hit the target, right? So that's where I would start, is just kind of understand where that ego, where that resistance, where those blinders, and why were they put on, when were they put on, and how do we take them down?
That's awesome. Yeah. The self-awareness thing is really big. That's very, very important. So I would love to pivot a little bit, still talking about work culture,
Sure.
but I would love to pivot a little bit and talk about, have you experienced in your many years of being in leadership positions, have you experienced team members who went through burnout? Like, have you experienced that? And if you have, were you able to kind of coach them out of that, or did you like have to witness the burnout and wait for them to recover or help them recover? Kind of talk about that.
Very interesting question, by the way. And burnout has such a vast scope these days. You could attribute it to workplace culture. You could attribute it to, we're all working harder with less resources, and expect it to produce more than we did before. And yes, I have experienced that. And my first attempt, and I've also, I'm not a licensed therapist, but I've also had conversations with couples that are going through issues. And what I try to do is reconnect them to the joy that they initially experienced when they came, and remember and viscerally what that was like, whether it was, your first couple years as a couple, or the first couple months in the business, and why you joined this organization. What are the great things you learned about it? Because sometimes it's easy as just reconnecting that to the positive memories, and people get caught up in all sorts of things, and outside their sphere of influence, and they're worried about things that they have no control over. And that's what they start to fret about, right? So the first thing I do is just reconnect them to why they like this job. And then we look at the tactical side of what you're doing. What are the stress causers, reasons in your job right now? Why are you not liking it? And to ensure that there's nothing that they're piling on themselves that is self-induced first, because that's what we can control. And then looking at what are the other factors in their work experience that might be causing these stress factors. Now, there are some times that, for various reasons in the organization, whether it's financial, whether it's staffing or workload, or workforce reductions, right? That there are some things that we just have to live with. And if that's something that's not going to help them create for themselves a positive work environment because of whatever personal reasons they might be having, then sometimes you need to free them up to pursue something else that they are going to feel valued in. And I've lost some great employees because the scope and the pay that I was not able to offer them, which they were definitely worth it, every penny. I just didn't have the ability in my department to do that. um, they left, and with my blessing, because I would rather have them be fulfilled and feeling valued than staying and being miserable. And it wasn't necessarily anything to do with the leadership, but as a leader, you have to be able to make those calls. And if there are legitimately things outside of your control, forcing somebody to stay and not helping them find where they're going to be truly at home, it's all going to just bring down your productivity in your department. So um, you have to be willing to do that.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm glad you shared that because that's important too. There's typically going back to what you're talking about with self-awareness and the why behind a leader choosing to stick with something. Sometimes it's that like that fear of losing a valuable, teammate. And I'll be honest, like I encountered that in that job. Like I didn't have to stay for the 9, but I was also one, I felt beholden to the founder. Like I don't want to leave him holding the bag. But at the same time, when I started experiencing the burnout and talking about the possibility of finding my replacement, we had reached a point where he decided that he was not going to,
Oh,
like, period. Yeah. So it
well,
was
you
it was
also
very interesting. Hmm. Go
you are on that millennial Gen X kind of divide, right?
ahead. Hmm.
And you are talking about loyalty, which is very much a Gen X quality. Not necessarily, and I'm talking about loyalty to an employer.
Right.
That's not a condition that has remained in terms of priority in people's lives. And if
Yeah.
somebody under the age of 35 is more than 3 years in an organization, they deserve a gold watch. I mean, that's longevity in an organization, right? And you're not having a lot of those conversations. So I think that makes it even more difficult for a leader now because the
Hmm.
expectation of loyalty is not there. You could push it a little bit and they would stay. People are walking around with resumes on their phones now and in their pockets on flash drives, right? Because uh, they're not beholden to anything but their own experience and the value they feel that they're bringing and that they're being showed that they have, right? And if any of those
Mm.
three legs of that stool fall apart, there's someplace else. So you can't rely on the blind loyalty of people to stay around. So it just forces you to always be on top of your game as a leader.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned the value thing because I did want to come back to that. Kind of talk about how you would recommend a leader impart that to their team members because some people based on their personality don't necessarily need it, like they don't necessarily need praise in that way, but what do you find has been the most effective way to impart your appreciation for your team? Like how do you normally go about that?
So there's a colleague that I have in Central Florida. Her name is Camaria Scott. She's brilliant, absolutely brilliant, consultant, talent expert. And she did a speech recently where she talked about the concept of employee value proposition. And employee value proposition used to be the gold watch when you have your 20 years, or the break room posters and all this other trappings. And she argued brilliantly that the employee value proposition does not exist anymore at the enterprise level. The employee value proposition exists between the leader and the employee, the direct manager and that employee. And that is as far as the value proposition in an organization goes. And so when that leader, whether they're a CEO or whether they're a line supervisor at the Buddy Squirrel at the mall for the night shift, that person, that employee's performance, that employee's sense of respect, appreciation, and value is 100% attributed to your relationship and how you work with that individual. And you have to approach every single employee differently because every person is seeking a different value output or and proposition from that relationship that you have with those leaders. And you have to be cognizant of that. If you aren't focusing on that relationship and ensuring that person is respected, valued, and appreciated always, that's when you lose them. That's when you lose these employees in 30 days, 3 months. and you barely get a year out of them. And it has to be immediate. There's no ramp up. Young workers these days expect that on day one. 100%, right? And it's not something, the concept of pulling up your bootstraps or earning your ears, as we called it at Disney, gone. That level of engagement needs to start on day one. And you have to be aware of that as a leader.
Wow, that's eye-opening. Okay. Um, from a practical standpoint, what would that normally look like? Is that like a one-on-one conversation that's like 5 minutes? Is it like
Well,
emails? Is it
great
quarterly? Like,
question.
what does that look like?
I think first and foremost, you need to understand your people, right? I heard somebody talk about an experience. They were applying for a job, and they didn't talk to a live person until the fourth round of interviews. And he's like, look, he says, if that's the culture I'm going into, I don't want any part of it. I mean, so that employee value proposition was established in the interview process. I mean, that's how early these things are identified. So, and I go back to that quote I said before, one key does not unlock every door. You can't manage with a shotgun these days. It has to be on that individual level. It has to be focused on what does this person need. So all my employees, when I've had them, is my first, I sit down day one. What do you want to do? And how can I help you get there? I establish that right away. There's ancillary questions like, well, how do you like to be communicated to? But I want to find out what's important to this person. What do you want to do? Is it here? Is it another department? Is there a specific skill set you want to learn? And how do you see me helping you get there? So they know that it's an open-ended proposition, but with my ultimate support. So if you're not taking the time to understand the person, that person is not going to work for you. If you can't make them a priority, how do you expect them to make the work or the company or your customer a priority?
Yeah, that is so important. And that ties into, you had quoted Simon Sinek in a previous interview. I love him too. Like he's amazing. Um, yeah, like it's the point he had made, and the reason why his work was so groundbreaking is you're pushing for these results as the leader of this corporation, but you're talking to maybe your middle managers or something when it's the frontline people that are going to determine your results. So you got to get down to the frontline people. Like, make sure the frontline people that are dealing with the customers
Oh,
are in great
100%.
shape. Yeah, because
How,
that's gonna come through in their communication with your customers.
how many
They're
times have you
frustrated.
heard like the CEO spouting some BS at a town hall, but the frontline workers like, really? Like that never happened. So there's this divide, there's this chasm in terms of that culture, right? And that's why that EVP is now at that manager employee relationship, because if what they see on the ground is not identical to what's being spouted off at some town hall or some poster in the break room, it's all BS and it doesn't mean a thing. You get me
Exactly.
all fired up.
Hey, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. Actually, I just saw a post on LinkedIn like this. It was one of those longer posts, but the graphic that the young lady used, because she's a consultant as well, but the graphic said, your company culture is not the poster that's on the values poster on the wall, to your point. It's the bully that keeps getting promoted for his results.
Oh,
And I was like, exactly. I was like, wow, which
yep.
it demonstrates your point
Mic drop.
perfectly, which is exactly my job. It's like there's the thing that you're saying that is the most important to you versus what you're doing internally. And the message is loud and clear to the employees internally if you're promoting the person that's all about the numbers and you're completely forgetting about the people behind the numbers. Because behind every number is a person. Like behind every number is a name and every name is a soul. Like everybody's important. So I appreciate you, sharing that, talking
Well,
about
our
that.
next conversation will be about some work I'm doing about, you ask any CEO what's the most important asset in your organization, they're going to say their people. But if you
Mm,
look at the P&L, it's not the same. They treat
nope.
other assets from a financial perspective a hell of a lot better than they do their people. And so again, like you said, if that message is not equivalent on both sides, and that's what the young workers especially look for, if that value proposition isn't realized immediately on that frontline experience, you're dead to them.
They are gone. They are gone. They're gone. Yeah. So I'm gonna, as we start to wrap up here, I want to pivot a little more to the book
Sure,
itself.
sure.
I would love to hear like your author process, because earlier you mentioned this book is an homage to not only your mentors but also your mentees and what they taught you. But what was your actual process? Was it like a series of journal entries? Is this like you sharing specific stories?
Oh, great question.
Tell our audience how you were able to craft it.
My last position, I was vice president of talent and leadership development at a major timeshare organization, and we got bought out. So as I say, I got freed up to pursue my entrepreneurial dreams. And with that time I had on my hands, I said, I'm going to write a book. Okay. So that was the first thing. I'm like, I put the goal on the mirror on the wall in the bathroom. And I'm like, so, I see what I'm going to do. I started interesting process. So I started just taking out my phone and rambling into my phone stories, concepts. And I would take this 4 pages of just dribble. And I did use ChatGPT to help me organize it. I said, "Hey, take this document and give me bullet points of what you see." And that started me on the process. Oh, okay. So now I kind of laid out my chapters, what I want to go to. And I was one of those people that I read, On Writing by Stephen King, amazing book, by the way. And I scheduled my writing, and I would sit at my computer and I would stare at a blank screen, and I got frustrated because I wasn't, as a writer, you've experienced this, right? And so I found for me personally that if I schedule my writing, that's a negative, because if I schedule from 6 to 7 in the morning, every morning I'm going to write, and I can't come up with anything from 6 to 7, then I'm disappointed in myself, and it takes me down a couple of notches. What I found for me, I'm a little more organic when it comes to my writing. I will write when I'm inspired. And sometimes that inspiration would be 3 hours. Sometimes it'd be 15 minutes. But a day or two might go by before I touch the book. But then I'm like, oh yeah. And I would lay out everything. So I have people have called in, and I've mentored some folks who are trying to write their first novel. And it's you can't go off of what somebody says you should do. You need to find your sweet spot and always shoot the ball from that sweet spot. And you're going to find that works for me. So for me, it was a bit more organic. But then again, I've been accused of being organic in a lot of things, and people that are very rote drives them nuts. But that's who I am.
That that part. Yeah, and I mean, I as someone that teaches authors, like I get it. Like there are some who are like that. The term in the writing industry is pantsers, like people who write by the seat of their pants.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I'll be honest with you, for a long time I was that person. Like it wasn't until very recently, like within the last 2 years, that like God helped me understand a system. Like, here's what I helped you use to develop that first book. Here's how you can remix that to something that's repeatable. So I've been able to, share that with
Well, God bless you.
people who,
I need to learn
yeah,
your secret, because I'm trying to write my second one. I think writing books is like tattoos. Once you get one, you're going to want another. And
yes,
I'm about a third into the second one, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't. I need that discipline. I think more in the second one than I did the first one.
yes. And this is a point that's been bubbling up more recently. So I've been sharing it in more of my episodes, in more of my conversations with clients. Is you'll be surprised when you go through this process with this first one. You'll be surprised. You actually have more than one book in you. You know what I mean? Like, given your level of experience, exactly like the amount of things that you've gone through, or even within the one thing that your thesis is for the first book, you'll discover there are sub points that you can write solo books about just from the main idea of your first book. Like, you'll be surprised. So, like, I'm super excited to know you're writing a second one. That's really good. Y'all
Fingers
heard it here
crossed.
first. Heard it here first. Again, congrats on the book signing you did in Claremont. I was so heartbroken I didn't get to go because I was
Oh,
like it's only like an hour away from me. But let our audience know where they can get a copy of your book, where they can interact with you. I know you're heavy on LinkedIn, so kind of let our
yes.
folks know where they can find you.
Thank you. Absolutely connect with me on LinkedIn, Yogi Mueller. You can go to my website, craftleadership.net, and you can have access to getting the book there. You can also have access to taking the Grit Index Assessment for free. If you're interested to find out how you process and do something with feedback. You can find my paperback on Amazon, but ebooks, you can find it on almost every book site out there.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And lastly, I would have been remiss to not ask you this, but you mentioned bringing in AI into your writing process in terms of simplification.
Correct.
Kind of share how that experience like helped you. It sounded like you used it to kind of summarize like your
Yes.
big recordings that you did, but like talk about that, and are you going to do that for the next one, or have you started doing that for the second one?
You know what? I'm going to go on the limb here and say, if you have AI as a tool, and that had got me through more writer's block than sitting and staring at a blank screen. So you can actually work with AI to ask you questions to help you unlock the thinking. You know what it is, you just don't know how to start putting it on paper. And through this line of questioning, you can create your own GPT in there too to have it quiz you on unlocking writer's block. So if you use it appropriately and you're not just copy and pasting, which is a whole other conversation, that writer's block is a thing of the past. It was such an amazing thought partner through that process.
Well said.
I
Well
hope I didn't
said. Now I'm
disappoint you on that
excited.
answer.
No, that's exactly what I was hoping for, because I'm a big proponent of don't use the thing to write for you. That is not the point. Like, use it as the tool that it is. Like, if you have an idea and maybe you need something rephrased, something simplified, by all
Mm-hmm.
means, like, do that. And I
Yep.
tell people, like, especially for nonfiction authors, I'm like, use it as your research tool. Like, it'll cut
Oh,
down time on your research. Like, definitely use it for that. If you need stats, use your GPT for that. If you're doing research for a novel, like something that's fiction, let that do the heavy lifting for you, but don't have the tool write your book for you and then copy paste that. Like, that's where the problem is. Yes.
amen, sister. Amen on that one.
Exactly. Well, Yogi, thank you so much for being on. I appreciate you. And I will definitely have you back, because we definitely want to have those future conversations and celebrate with you for the release of the second book. I'm so excited.
Well, my positive impression of you has only grown over the last, and you realize it's been, do you want me to throw out a date?
Let's go.
It's been almost 15, 16, 17 years, something like that, give or take.
Yeah,
Almost 20 years, probably, that you were in
almost.
my class.
Yeah.
Crazy. But my you continue to impress me, and I'm very proud of everything you've accomplished and the person that you have become, and the beacon that you are for so many others. So keep being strong, doing what you're doing, because it's really great stuff.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Was that not an amazing interview? I hope you took as many notes as I did. No, I wasn't writing, but I took a lot of mental notes from the conversation. Plus, I get to watch this back as many times as I would like to. So, this was definitely this was an enriching conversation for sure. And hey, drop your ahas, your takeaways in the comments, and if you want them back, put that in the comments too. I'd love to have them back, and I do intend to, because there were certain conversations that you can kind of hear that were starting to branch off, and I'm like, yep, we definitely want to revisit this one. So if you enjoyed this, be sure to subscribe on YouTube if you haven't yet. You can subscribe there at Getting the Win, and make sure you turn on the bell to get all the notifications so you never miss a single episode and you don't miss the episode when he returns. And of course, you can follow me on Instagram, Pinterest, and Threads at Getting the Win Show. On those platforms, I am on TikTok at Melissa T. Writes with 2 L's and 2 S's. And of course, I am also on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn at Melissa Thomas. Like, I'm that OG. Like it's me. If you look up my name, 2 L's and 2 S's, with my last name, I'm there. And of course, you can catch the show on Spotify. If you're an audiophile, just look for the Getting the Win show on Spotify, and I am there. But in the meantime, in between time, have a great and productive rest of your Wednesday, a great and productive rest of your week, and I will see you right back here next Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern. Peace.